Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. As you can see, I've got my wife Grace with me today because it's Wednesday, and like we do every Wednesday, it's a top 10 countdown. Last week I did my opinion of the top 10 all-time best WWE finishing moves because my buddy Anthony had asked me to. And then after I did that video, my buddy Mark Thomas asked me if I would do a list of the top 10 all-time worst finishing moves. So I thought, well, since we did best last week, we'll do worst this week. And before I get into it, I want to say that my friend Chris that I work with asked me how come I didn't have the pedigree on my list last week. And then my buddy Eric messaged me on the YouTube comment page and asked me how come it wasn't on my list. And the reason why it wasn't on my list is because I try to make it realistic and believable, because the point of the wrestling business is it's supposed to be believable. It's supposed to be realistic. And to me, all the moves that I had on my list are a lot more devastating than a pedigree. Because if somebody asked me to jump 3 feet in the air and fall on my face, I would do it. I've done it before. And that just does not hurt as bad as all the things that I had on my top 10 list last week, which is why it was not on my top 10 list. And Chris told me that I was too young to be so old school, because a lot of my moves last week were from back in the what they call glory days of wrestling, and that was because back then it was more about wrestling, whereas today it's more about the entertainment value. Now, I love old school wrestling, I love new school wrestling, but there's a big difference because old school was mainly about wrestling, whereas new school is mainly about entertainment. And that's why a lot of these on my top 10 list today are from the modern age of wrestling, because it's more about entertainment than it is the actual wrestling. I've got Grace with me because there's a couple times on here that we're going to give you a visual of the move and explain to you why the move is so stupid. So without further ado, we'll get into this list of top 10 all-time worst finishing moves. What's number 10, Grace?
People's elbow.
People's elbow. Now, I know a lot of people are going to think, oh, that was The Rock's move, and it was. And it was entertaining. But at the same time, you got to be realistic. Why are you going to lay there on the mat and watch a guy stand there for 2 minutes just to come down and give you an elbow drop? If you think about that logically, there's no logic behind that. Why are you just going to lay there and let a guy take his pad off and shake his elbow and run the ropes, and you're just going to lay there and say, come on? There's just no logic behind that. It's entertaining, but it's just flat out stupid. But the only reason why it's number 10 is because he didn't use the move most of the time as a finisher. Usually he had the rock bottom, but he would occasionally use the people's elbow for a finisher, and that's just plain out stupid. Why would anybody just lay there and watch a guy do all that jiving, and you just stand there and wait for him? Here in a minute he's going to elbow drop me. There's no logic behind that whatsoever. Number 9 on the list is the Warrior Splash, which of course was the Ultimate Warrior's move. It might have been more devastating had he came, off the top rope. But anybody that knew the Ultimate Warrior, he just was not very good in the ring, which is why his finisher was just a splash, because he couldn't do a whole lot. He just bounced off the rope and splash you, which I'm sure would hurt, but realistically, I don't know if it would knock you out. So number 9 was the Warrior Splash. What's number 8, Grace?
Hyperdrive.
Hyperdrive. Now, a lot of people may not know this because it was NXT, and this was back in the day before NXT started coming on USA, but that was actually Mojo Rawley's finishing move when he was in NXT for a while. It was called the Hyperdrive because his gimmick was he didn't get hyped, he stayed hyped, but he basically took Doink the Clown's whoopee cushion, but he did it in the ring instead of off the top rope. He would just lay you flat and then bounce off the rope, straddle you, and sit on you. And it was called the Hyperdrive. But Mojo is just
like
such...
Rikishi sit on you? Like, you on the ground and he sit on you?
Yeah.
Oh,
but it was Mojo Rawley, and that's why it wasn't so realistic, because he's just not... He's not a very big guy. So he kind of took Doink's finisher and Rikishi's finisher and put them together, but he's just so small, it's just not believable. But it was called the Hyperdrive. Luckily, he didn't stick with it long. And speaking of sticking with it, let me say this while I was just talking about Triple H a few minutes ago, and see if anybody knows this. This is just kind of a did you know fact for the day. When Triple H first debuted in the WWE in 1995, he actually did a finishing move called the Pedigree Pandemonium, which was basically an RKO. That was Vince's idea to give to him, but DDP called and said, will you please stop doing my finishing move? So he quit doing the Pedigree Pandemonium after about 2 months and then started doing the actual pedigree. I just want to see if anybody out there knew that.
I did.
Number 7 on the list,
The Worm.
The Worm. And
That was stupid.
it's just like the People's Elbow, except for worse, because the People's Elbow, at least, was an elbow drop.
At least he's standing over you.
Scotty 2 Hotty does even more jiving than The Rock did, and did all that bouncing and rolling and skipping and hopping, and then did a chop. Now, why in the world, first of all, would anybody just lay there and let that man do all that? And second of all, how is a man that weighs 190 pounds soaking wet going to knock you out by chopping you? That's just not realistic. No way, no how, no form. So number 7 on the list is The Worm, which of course was made famous by Scotty 2 Hotty. Now number 6 on the list is going to be the first time where Grace and I are going to stand up, and I'm going to try to show you visually why this move is so stupid, and then I'll try to explain it just in case you don't get it. But it's the claws, and the reason why I put it in plural form was because there was more than one claw. Of course, we know Mick Foley did the mandible claw, and then Baron von Raschke and a few other guys made the actual claw move famous. And then at one time, you all may not know this, but at one time, a Junkyard Dog did this thing called the armpit claw. So any kind of claw move was stupid. So Grace and I are going to stand up, and I'm going to show you visually why the move makes 0 sense.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, Grace, put me in the claw. Oh, God, she got me in the claw. My hands are free, and my feet are free. But I'll just stand here and take it. She's got me in the claw. Just wanted y'all to see visually why the move was so stupid. I'm sure the move actually hurts. But if somebody has you in the claw, your hands are free and your feet are free. So you're just going to stand there and wiggle your arms and say, "Oh my God, he's got me in a claw." I mean, why would you not defend yourself? There's in the same way with Mick Foley's mandible claw. I'm sure if somebody actually sticks their hand in your throat, it hurts. But you have your arms, you have your elbows, you have your feet. Why would you not defend yourself? There's just no logical reason. Same way with Junkyard Dog's armpit claw. He grabbed your armpit. Well, you got your whole.
He grabbed your armpit?
He grabbed your armpit.
That's all?
And put your armpit in a claw. He did.
Like, grab it?
Yes. He didn't stick with it long because it made no sense. But still, why are you just gonna stand there and let this man hold your armpit and just stand there and let him do it? There's just no logic behind.
So wait, he
stuff
won a
like
match
that.
like that?
Yes.
I ain't never saw it.
People would tap out to it. Yeah. That's a long time ago.
Well, he pulled your arm hairs or something?
Well, I guess it could be, but most wrestlers shave their armpit. But
they do.
you've got a nerve right there. So I'm sure he was grabbing that nerve, which would hurt, but you still got your whole body to defend yourself.
Yeah.
There's just no logic behind
You
that.
would easily start slapping.
So before we get into the top 5, I'll recap numbers 10 through 6 in case you've tuned in late. And if you have, please go back and watch the entire video. We're doing the top 10 worst all-time finishing moves, and this was requested by Mark Thomas. So if you know him, tell him thank you for the entertainment for the week, seeing Grace and I do one of these visually. We're going to do another one visually here in a minute. But number 10 was the People's Elbow. Number 9 was the Warrior Splash. Number 8 was Hyperdrive, which if you have not seen that, go back to the NXT days. It was Mojo Rawley's finisher for a few moments in NXT. Number 7 was The Worm by Scotty 2 Hotty. And number 6 was the Claws, because there was different variations of the Claws. But none of them made sense. They were all stupid. And number 5 on the list is the next time Grace and I are going to stand up. And this time it's going to be me doing it because she don't know what this move is.
I really don't.
And I may have the name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's right. But not a lot of people remember that before Byron Saxton became a terrible, and I mean terrible, commentator, he was even more of a terrible, pathetic wrestler in NXT. And the reason why he became a commentator was because, well, he sucked as a wrestler. But on the downside, he also sucks as a commentator. But his finisher in NXT, I believe, was called Saxtonation. I'm 99% sure that's what it was called. It looks like a half Nelson, face lock, fake, half skull crushing finale. Now I'm going to stand up and show you what it looked like. Come on, Grace.
On me?
Now we're not gonna take the back bump here because we're on a hard floor. This is what it looked like. Turn sideways. He had your arm. He had your head. He would swing backwards, swing forward, swing backwards, swing forward, and then swing back into a back bump.
You just saw that?
Yep. And so it looked like he couldn't decide if he was going to put you in a half Nelson, and then he couldn't decide if he was going to give you a front face bump or a back bump. He would just grab your arm and grab your head and go frontward and back and frontward and back. And I'm pretty sure
and then you fall on your back.
It was called the Saxtonation. But why are you just going to stand there and let a guy hold your head and hold your arm and dance with you? Let's go forward. Let's go back. Let's go forward. Oh, let's go back. But I'm pretty sure it was called the Saxtonation. And that was Byron Saxton's finishing move when he was in the NXT. And that's why he became a commentator. What's number 4, Grace?
Hogan. Was that leg drop?
Leg drop.
Uh-huh.
Now, we all know Hulk Hogan, kind of like Ultimate Warrior, he wasn't a very good wrestler. And that's why his finishing move was a leg drop, because he couldn't do a whole lot. And that tells you how stupid the move was, because there's been probably 9,478,768,000 other wrestlers over the years that have done a leg drop, but it's not as a finisher. It's just a setup to something else. But Hogan had to do it for a finisher because, well, he couldn't do anything else. But it's a leg drop. Just a basic move. It's a decent move, and I'm sure it hurts when a guy that big falls on you, but it's not going to knock you. It's not going to knock you out. So it's just not realistic. Number 3 on the list. Umaga. The thumb spike. Now, I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I've been at work before, and I've jammed my thumb on cardboard because the thumb is the weakest of the fingers. So how believable is it that somebody can jam their thumb, your little bitty thumb, in somebody's throat? And first of all, it's not going to hurt them. But second of all, it's going to make you jam your finger. But amazingly, Umaga never hurt his finger doing that move. But it's a thumb spike. How are you going to knock anybody out by jamming them in the throat with a little bitty thumb? So yes, that's number 3 on the list. Number 2 on the list was the Great Khali head chop. Now this is going to be the last time Grace and I are going to stand up, just in case you have not seen Great Khali's head chop. But I'm sure everybody remembers Great Khali's head chop. But it was something else that was just not believable.
Oh, okay. Well, you might be believable though.
Here we go. You ready? That's it. You got to take a back bump.
Oh, I ain't bumping nothing. I ain't bumping nothing.
No, I didn't expect her to take a back bump. I was just being funny, but that was his finisher. He just chopped you with his hand,
What was it like? 7
hand by itself, across your head.
What is it like? 7 feet tall?
Yeah,
300 something pounds.
yeah.
It wouldn't have hurt that bad.
Now, if he'd have had something around his hand, it may have made it more believable. But just a man with his hand, just his hand, hand only, giving you a chop in your head and gonna knock you out, that's just stupid.
Well, it might have actually been believable because he was so big.
Now he didn't.
But he had went through a whole match and fought with you, so I guess it wouldn't be believable because he probably done other stuff that was harder than that in the match, which made it unbelievable.
Luckily, he didn't stick with it long. He did other finishers, thank God, but he did do that one for a time, and it was just plain out stupid. And number 1 on the list, what is it, Grace?
Naomi rear view.
I ain't really got to go in depth on this move because everybody has seen Naomi wrestle. And the rear view, all she does is stand flat-footed, jump in the air, turn around, and hit you with her butt. That ain't going to knock anybody out. You're not even in the corner. You're just standing flat-footed in the middle of the ring, and she stands flat-footed in the middle of the ring and jumps up and turns around and hits you with her butt. And then you fall down. That don't even sound believable in any way, shape, or form. So in my opinion, that is the dumbest finisher of all time because some of these moves were only done for a short period of time, and then some of the moves were only done as a finisher a few times, and then they were done more of a setup move like the Rock's people's elbow. But Naomi has always done that for a finisher, and I've always thought, surely to God they'll give her something else. But so far, they haven't. She's done it her entire career.
She's still doing it now, ain't she?
She's still doing it. And I'm still hoping they'll eventually find something else for her to do. But if you have not seen the Hyperdrive by Mojo Rawley or the Saxtonation by Byron Saxton, please get on YouTube and watch those moves, and you'll see why they were on my list. They were just plain out, flat out, stupid. Now, coming up on tomorrow's show, we'll do our weekly NASCAR review and review the race from Sonoma this past Sunday. But I want to go 10 through 1 just in case you didn't catch the whole video. Number 10 was People's Elbow. Number 9 was the Warrior Splash. Number 8 was Hyperdrive. Number 7 was the Worm. Number 6 was all the claws, all the variations. Number 5 was Saxtonation. Number 4 was the Leg Drop by Hulk Hogan. Number 3 was Thumb Spike. Number 2 was the Head Chop. And number 1 was Naomi's Rear View. And then I'm going to mention a few moves that just barely missed the list because a top 10 can only have 10 moves. One that missed the list was the Big Ending by Big E. The move looks devastating, but if you actually slow it down and watch it in slow motion, your entire body falls on Big E's arm. So Big E really takes the brunt of the force on his arm because he doesn't move his arms. How's he hurting you more than he's hurting him when he's dropping your entire body across his arm? That just doesn't make good sense. Another one that barely missed the list was, tell them, Grace.
What, Snake Eyes?
Snake Eyes. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking that's the Undertaker's move, and it was, but many of you may not know that back around 1991 and 1992, Vinny Vegas, which was played by Kevin Nash when he was in WCW, that was his finishing move. It was called Snake Eyes. Now, when Undertaker did it, he did it basically just, for a setup for later in the match. But Vinny Vegas, Kevin Nash, did it for a finisher. And it would be okay if the turnbuckles weren't padded. But considering every announcer and every commentator in History of Mankind tells you that those turnbuckles are padded, and then he's going to hold you up and drop you on a padded turnbuckle. It's padded. How's that going to knock you out? It's padded.
But you've done it through the match, though.
But it didn't make the top 10 because it was a stupid move. But luckily, the Kevin Nash, Vinny Vegas character didn't last long. Plus, as dumb as it was, it's not as dumb as everything else on the list. It was good for a setup like Taker did it, but not for a finisher. Another one that barely missed the list was natural selection. And the reason why it missed the list was because that's Charlotte Flair's move, but she very rarely does it as an actual finisher. Her actual finisher, as we all know, is the figure 8. But she has done the natural selection for a finisher on occasion. But you're 6 inches from the mat. So how is her driving her head or driving your head into the mat going to knock you out when you're 6 inches from it? There's just no logic behind that. And the last one that barely missed the list was the Big Show punch. And the reason why I didn't put it on the list was because the Big Show's so big, he actually could make it believable. But now Lacey Evans does it, and it's not believable. She's a 150-pound woman going to punch you in the face. How is that going to knock you out? But the Big Show being so big, it was more believable, but still, these guys are wrestlers. They're not fighters. And if it does knock you out, why wouldn't Big Show just start the match and hit you with it right away? Why is he going to wrestle you for 20 minutes and punch you? Well, if the punch is going to knock you out, punch him as soon as the bell rings. So that took away a little bit of the luster. Otherwise, it would have made it more believable. But Big Show doing it does make it more believable than Lacey Evans doing it. That's our top 10 countdown of the week of the top 10 all-time worst finishing moves. And like I said earlier, when you see Mark Thomas, if you know him, tell him thank you for giving you your entertainment value for the day, seeing Grace and I visually do a few of these moves, just in case you guys were wondering what they were or why they were so stupid. But until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye. Let me give you my dad joke of the day. Why do seagulls fly over the sea? If they flew over the bay, they would be bagels.